first part of this video series, I took a look at some of the DC Collectibles Batman action figures, and I focused on a few members of the Bat family and some of his friends and allies. And at the end of the video, I looked at the Bat Signal that was released. But of course, this wasn't the only in-world prop that was released as part of this line, not by a long shot. In fact, we got quite a few different releases, and today I'm going to be taking a look at one of my personal favourites, which is the Batmobile. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that we've seen an animated series Batmobile released as a toy, and I don't think it'll be the last either. There's something about the Art Deco style of this Batmobile that's really interesting, and somehow managed to stay in the imagination after a very, very long time. Although the design is very simple, it manages to have an otherworldly kind of quality to it, which just makes it slightly mysterious and cool at the same time. And although my favourite Batmobile of all time is the 1989 Batmobile, I would actually say this comes as a very close second, and it left such a strong impression on me as a child. Kenner released a really fun version of this Batmobile for their toy line all those years ago. And I remember a friend of mine actually had this, and I was just filled with envy for the longest time because I never actually owned it, but I remember playing with it at his house, and I had a great time with it. And it was a fantastic toy because not only did it seem really screen accurate, it also doubled as the Batwing as well. You could pull apart the central component and there'd be the Batwing inside that Batman could sit in and sort of fly around in, although obviously it wasn't to scale, and I don't think it was strictly meant to be the Batwing, but that's very much how I saw it as a child. And so years later, when the Batmobile was announced to be part of the DC Collectibles line, I was absolutely thrilled. In fact, this is my first big toy purchase, and I saved up all year to make sure I had the money ready for the release date. So let's take a look at it, shall we? So, looking at the packaging, it should come as no surprise that this thing is huge. It is, of course, perfectly in scale for the 6-inch line, so that is the 1:12, so that should give you some indication of how big this thing is. Now, as you can see, the packaging has a fairly simple design. It's mostly black all over with a red trim, with a couple of logos here and there. But on the side panel, we do have an image of the Batmobile in profile, whilst the top of the packaging just has the title. And on the reverse panel, we can see the Batman Animated Series logo, which is really nice and quite effective, and we can see an actual photo of the car itself, both with and without its lights. I do really like that at one end of the packaging we have an image there of the front of the car as if we were looking directly at it. But at the opposite end is just the Batman Animated Series logo again. Okay, so I did say that this was massive and it is incredibly long. It's very difficult to give you a sense of scale here, but trust me, this has taken up twice the usual space I have when I'm filming anything. Okay, and here we have the front of the vehicle. So you can see, there's not a lot of details to this vehicle. And I think when I first opened it, I was actually a little bit disappointed because I thought there might be more attention to detail, but what can they really bring out of it? That is the design of the animated series Batmobile. There's not a lot of detail here, but what there is looks really nice. I love the grille on the front of the car. I love how sleek it is, and just that streamlined approach is really, really effective. And if nothing else, you can say it is definitely screen accurate. And the reverse of the vehicle is really nice. This is where there's a few more touches, and this definitely comes to life when we switch the lights on. Now, one thing to note is that the tyres are very thick rubber and they're quite a wide tyre. Again, very screen accurate. But I was surprised when I revisited the Batmobile because it's been in its packaging for a long time now. But when I reopened it, I found there was a lot of this sort of white dust all around, and I had to wipe them down. So you'll see in a lot of these shots, you'll see them with that sort of hazy white dust over each of the tyres until I cleaned it up. And I think this will be something that's familiar to a lot of collectors who have toys that include rubber as part of it because they can perish over time. So although the rubber of these tyres doesn't seem to have been compromised at all, it is a little bit worrying to see that there is that fine dust over this because honestly, I didn't have it on display very long at all before it went back into its box. Okay, and once we switch the lights on, that's when this vehicle really pops in my opinion. I filmed this during the day, so it's probably not as impressive, but if you put this in the dark at night, this is quite a strong, powerful light that we can see at the front of the vehicle here. And it will nicely light up anything that's in front of it. So if you have a display or a wall, then it's going to light up quite nicely. Now you might notice that the cockpit is actually lit up, and you can see that from outside the vehicle, which is great through the glass there. The roof slides forward just as it does in the animated series, and you can see how the lights on the dashboard splash against the back of the seats. And the roof slides forward fairly easily, there's no resistance as such, it does go along that track there so it can be a bit wobbly, and it's not a very smooth action. This is what the dashboard looks like before it's lit up. So you can see it's quite colourful, there's lots of different buttons on there, and there is a green plastic to make that quite colourful as well. When we switch the lights on, this becomes a very vibrant ultraviolet blue. And you'll notice that the steering wheel can slide forwards and backwards and can turn from side to side. So of course Batman can grip this, and you can definitely recreate that sense of him driving it. This is a nice little touch. I thought initially that the steering wheel might control the steering of the front two tyres because they do turn from side to side, although on mine that doesn't seem to be the case. You'll notice as well there is actually a gear stick, which is really cool. It's made of rubber, so again we can see that faint white dusting on it. But I think this is a really nice touch and it's quite fun to have. The seatbelts are made of elastic, and they do have a plastic piece there that actually clicks into place, although I will say it is a bit of a nightmare because there's not much space in the cockpit to get it in. The cockpit is actually pretty small to get your hand in, and when you've got two figures in there and you're trying to wrestle with them to get this plastic piece into this tiny little hole here, it's pretty difficult. Although I will say when it is in, it fits perfectly snugly and holds it, it doesn't pop out. So here is the reverse of the car again. This is without the lights on, of course. And then here it is with the lights on. Obviously this is worlds apart. Now again, I have filmed it during the daylight, so it's probably not as impressive as it is in the darkened room or at night, when I assure you it definitely lights up anything that is behind it. It will light up the wall, it will light up your diorama, and it will be a very strong yellow and red that you see there. And it's very effective and looks really, really good. In case you're curious, here is the underneath the vehicle. You'll see this compartment here, which is where the batteries go, and there's a little switch there that allows you to switch the lights on and off. Here are the big chunky tyres. As you can see, they are absolutely huge, and as I pointed out there is some white dust on mine, which is a little bit worrying. At the front here, you'll see there is suspension. You see that the tyres can arch one way or the other, so to help it steer. It's not that practical in real life, and sadly it doesn't seem to connect to the steering wheel. But it does roll forward beautifully smoothly. Those tyres are really very, very effective. So there is no screeching, there's no resistance, there's nothing there that makes it feel like a toy. Like it's so smooth, and it looks really good. As I said, in terms of the steering, those tyres don't give much away really. They don't help you that much. You're going to have to physically force it in the direction you want it to go. But hey, that's not a problem. Now, one criticism I would have is that you'll notice with the original Kenner release, they actually had an action feature with the tyres where those spokes at the side there would pop out and they could pop other car tyres, essentially. That would have been something that would have been nice. Given the expense of this item, it would have been really cool to have that way. You could just push a button so they could just extend out on a rod, because they are there, they just need to pop out. Okay, and to give you a sense of scale, here is Batman and Robin with this vehicle. So I did say that it was big, and hopefully this will give you more of a sense of just how big it is, because of course it's incredibly long. Virtually 2/3 of this vehicle is just the bonnet, and it looks incredibly impressive. I mean, there's no doubt that this is going to be the centerpiece of this collection, because it can be used not just to put Batman and Robin in the vehicle, but it can be used as a centerpiece to have other figures around as well. It can act as a prop, it can act as a bit of a diorama in a way, because you've instantly created a bit of a scene, a bit of a street scene, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think when you put the other figures with it, it just looks brilliant. Now, you can put any figure from this series in the Batmobile, and I did persevere with my original release, which had the rubber cape, but they did release this special version of Batman and Robin with the cotton cape, and these are the ones that are the best to sit in the vehicles. And here you can see, with the lights on and the figures in the vehicle, even when the roof is fully closed, you can still see the figures inside through that window display, and that's really, really cool. And here they both are with the roof open, and I think they look absolutely fantastic. They fit in there perfectly well. You'll see that I did persevere and put Batman's seatbelt on, but I wasn't quite as committed with Robin. It was just too fiddly. But I love how this looks. This is a lot of fun. And honestly, I'm still amazed that I have this, because I never thought I'd ever have an in-scale Batmobile for my 6-inch figures. This is absolutely fantastic, and it's a bit of a dream come true. Now, I told you at the beginning of the video that I spent a year saving up for this vehicle, and I was really pleased when I finally got it. I remember it arrived literally on Christmas Eve, and I was just thrilled to have it. But there is a little bit of a sting in the tail to this story, because a few months later they would make an announcement and release another version of this Batmobile, which was this Deluxe Batmobile. This one basically came with Batman and Robin with the cotton capes, the bat signal in a metallic silver paint, and of course the Batmobile. Except the crucial thing with the Batmobile is that they give it a completely different paint job. So rather than being a flat grey, all the silver parts were given a shiny metallic finish. Now this is obviously superior, and I did feel significantly disgruntled when this was announced because this is the one I would have gone for, obviously, and it wasn't much more money. At the time, it kind of felt like everyone who bought the first release sort of paid for the superior one to be released afterwards, and how many collectors are going to get both? Well, I know a lot of collectors would, but I wasn't in a place financially that I could do that. So I was very frustrated by this. And it did make me question whether the first release Batmobile, which is the one I have, is actually worth that money. Now, interestingly, over time, rather than appreciating in value, this one seems to have dropped in price, whereas lots of figures and vehicles in this line have only appreciated to huge amounts. The Batmobile hasn't really. And if I try to assess it honestly and openly without bias, I think there are a few issues with it. I think for the money, you are getting a fantastic vehicle. It's absolutely huge. I love the light up, working lights. That's absolutely brilliant. They're very effective, very powerful. I do love the tyres. I think they're really chunky and well made. And overall, it is a very well produced vehicle. And there's nice details where there is. However, given the nature of the design, there's not an awful lot of detail on this vehicle, so it's not like they've had to spend a lot of time just really moulding this perfectly and pulling out little details, little flourishes. It's very, very straightforward, and there's not a need for lots of paint apps or washes over the vehicle either. So part of me does wish there was just a few little extras in here to make this more appealing. So as I mentioned in the video, it would have been nice if the spokes would have come out from the wheel caps. That could have been a nice little feature. I don't think that would have been too difficult to put in place. Perhaps even the grapple that we see in the animated series that shoots out when he's spinning around corners, something like that would have been really cool. But that said, would I trade it in? Would I get rid of it? No, absolutely not. As I said before, this is the centerpiece of this collection in my opinion. I absolutely love it. I have a great affection for it. I do think it is a fantastic thing. And as I said, it is one of my favourite Batmobiles ever. So I do love having this in the collection. And it is still a bit of a dream for me to have this. I still love it very dearly. I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, please do give it a like. And remember to subscribe as I will be posting more videos soon.